We're talking about the rocks of this region. The oldest rocks in this region are around Broken Hill near Paleoproterozoic, which is part of the Precambrian. In those days, there were no large-bodied animals around at all. All you had were algae and bacteria.
And so how old is the Precambrian? It's a huge amount of time, isn't it?
Oh, it certainly is. It's most of the Earth history. But the rocks around here are between 1600 and 1700 million years ago.
Right, okay, and we see multicellular life really taking off at only about 545 million years.
That's right,
ago.
yeah.
So it's 3 times the age and more.
Yeah. Yeah, so the next lot of rocks here was about 800 million years later. The rocks are Neoproterozoic, and they're overlying the Broken Hill rocks, and they also didn't have much in the way of life forms in them. They had a few stromatolites, which are just algal colonies. You can still see them growing in Shark Bay. They go all the way through to the present.
And they had a lot to do with changing the chemical composition of the atmosphere, didn't they?
Quite possibly, yeah.
Okay. And then onwards from there?
Yes, the Cambrian rocks in the Mutwinji area north of here. There are some early Cambrian rocks which include some of the first coral fossils, the oldest ones in Australia, and quite a few other fossils. So they're quite interesting. Those rocks were overlain by Ordovician rocks, which are mostly sands deposited in rivers and near the shore.
And of course Cambrian and Ordovician are times before there was life on land, and in fact if we'd been trying to walk around on the surface of the earth during these times, it would have been poisonous to us really, wouldn't it?
It may well have been. There certainly wouldn't have been much growing. There wouldn't have been anything growing on the land really. It would have been just barren landscape, just with rocks and dirt.
Okay, and then into the... Do we have any Silurian rocks?
Not really. The next lot of rocks were the Devonian rocks.
Okay.
And they're massive sandstones and conglomerates at Mutwinji.
And can you tell us what a conglomerate is?
A conglomerate's made up of boulders and cobbles and sand in between them.
Okay.
And these form really big hills and cliffs in places, and they're what make Mutwinji so interesting to walk around.
Oh, right, okay. So do we still find fossils in there as well at all? Because the Devonian's well known for the evolution of fish. We see a real proliferation of all sorts of fish at this time, don't we?
Yeah, there's no fish fossils up there, but there are fish scales that have been found in the Devonian rocks up there. There's also a trackway that was made by something that's thought to be an arthropod. It's like a huge crab.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're quite interesting.
Okay. And then on from there, do we have any of these other rocks in this region?
In the area north of Menindee or northeast of Menindee, there is a small amount of remnants of the Permian Ice Age.
Right.
And
the Permian is coming towards the end of what we call the Paleozoic, which is the time just before the dinosaurs. It's where I've heard perhaps even 90-95% of all life was destroyed, wasn't it, at this time?
Oh, it was destroyed at the end of the Permian, not during the Permian. The Permian itself was the age when all the coal was laid down in eastern Australia.
Oh, really?
Yeah, or most of the coal anyway, all the black coal through New South Wales and Queensland. It was a very rich age for animals, and something pretty nasty happened at the end. But at the beginning of the Permian there was an ice age where there were big ice sheets that spread right across Australia, and you can still see some remnants of the sediments that were deposited from that time. A lot of it is conglomerate, as we mentioned before in the Devonian, and sandstones.
And where do we find them around this sort of region? Is there any in any of the areas that perhaps Burke and Wills passed by or nearby?
They may have passed through some of that area, but there's only very small remnants of the Permian Ice Age sediments left. Very difficult to pick up.
And where are they?
Somewhere well east of Broken Hill.
Right. Okay. So we move on from there. After the Permian, we're into the time of the dinosaurs, which comparably to what we're talking about in Broken Hill is very, very recent.
Yeah, we're looking at the Cretaceous.
Okay.
In this area, in this region anyway, there's some of the Great Artesian Basin, which is known to geologists as the Great Australian Basin, and that was an age of dinosaurs, and that was some fluvial sedimentation, as sediments deposited by rivers and overlain by marine sediments with marine fossils in them.
Right, and of course this Cretaceous time, it's the last period of the dinosaurs, and it's when there was the huge inland sea. That's one of the things it's well known for, isn't it?
That's right, yeah, the inland sea, which was where the Great Australian Basin sediments were deposited. And of course at the end of the Cretaceous you had the huge extinction of the dinosaurs, which has been featured in recent times. And they think it was a huge meteorite hit
the Gulf of Mexico, didn't it?
That's right.
And of course the sea there was relatively shallow, and I'd heard it collided with limestone at the base of that, which would have been incredibly poisonous when it collided.
Yeah, I imagine so.
Okay.
And in the local area, or local region I should say, the Great Australian Basin sediments were overlain by Eocene sandstones.
Okay, so Eocene, we're now into the Tertiary, which is the time in which the dinosaurs are dead and gone, and the mammals are really evolving to fill all of the different niches left behind by the dinosaurs, aren't they?
That's right, and it was probably a fairly hot time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, all we're seeing in the Eocene is some fairly coarse sandstones formed from big river systems.
Okay, all right. And then, of course, we were talking before about the Menindee Lakes. Do we have any sediments from that time? We were talking about potentially the Ice Age.
Yeah, Menindee Lakes, as part of the Darling River system, the Darling River sediments were deposited during the Pleistocene to recent. There would have been quite high sedimentation during the ice ages, when you're getting a lot of snow melt coming off the hills, off the mountains to the east, and coming down across the river system. And sometimes the river systems got choked up with the sediments and changed their course. You can see that at Lake Mungo area. Lake Mungo is a place where the Lachlan River used to flow down to some lakes, but the Lachlan River got choked up and changed its course. The same thing happened at Menindee Lakes. The Darling River used to flow down the Anna Branch system down to the Murray, but now the Anna Branch is just a backwater, and the Darling River got choked up around Menindee Lakes and changed its course, and now it's flowing down its current course.
Well, that's just incredible, isn't it? So in this region, you know, Menindee, Mudawinji, Tibooburra, Broken Hill, you know, frequently you can see in some places that the geology for a large expanse is the same, but it's incredibly dynamic here, isn't it? It's going from, you know, how old did you say?
We're going from about 1,700 million years.
Wow.
Up to
almost less than 1 million in some places.
To yesterday.
Yeah, less than 1 million. Wow. Well, thank you very much, Barry.